Hello, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to the webinar organized by the Climate and Clean Air Coalition. Today's webinar is titled Cool Solutions, Leveraging the Cooling Sector in NDC Implementation. And just as a quick background, the Climate and Clean Air Coalition and its country partners are leading efforts to ensure that non-CO2 pollutants are meaningfully included in the next generation of nationally determined contributions, or also known as NDC 3.0. And the webinar for today is the second of the four-part series of webinars that draws directly on the new CCAC guidance for including non-CO2 pollutants in NDCs. And we will learn about that a little bit later. My name is Denise San Valentin. I work at the Climate and Clean Air Coalition Secretariat here in UNEP. And again, welcome to everybody who are joining. Before we start and I give the floor to our opening remarks, I would like to welcome everyone to introduce yourselves in the chat, and also that all throughout the webinar, we welcome any questions or comments that you may have in relation with the webinar and what is being presented. We want to be as interactive as much as possible. And then there will also be later on like a Slido chat where you can kind of vote and introduce yourself, or like it's a survey, so that we can all be active and participative in this webinar. The webinar will last for 90 minutes and we hope that everyone can stay until the end. So for our opening remarks, I'd like to call on the CCAC Cooling Hub co-lead on behalf of Japan, Mr. Makoto Kato, who is also a member of the Board of Directors of the Overseas Environmental Cooperation Center, Japan, and the head of the Fluorocarbons Life Cycle Initiative. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Makoto. Makoto-san?
Thank you very much, Denise. Greetings from Tokyo. I'm Makoto. As introduced, so I am speaking as a co-lead of the Cooling Hub of CCAC. I would like to say a few words at the outset of this event. Cooling Hub brings together state and non-state members to build high-level political leadership and facilitate collaboration. In the cooling sector, the CCAC aims to maximize the environmental climate benefits of HFC phase down under the Kigali Amendment by promoting early and complementary action on HFCs. The Cooling Hub also accelerates strategic action to cut HFC emissions throughout the life cycle of cooling equipment and reducing the energy demand associated with new and existing cooling equipment in the context of the Paris Agreement, as well as the Kigali Amendment. Under the Cooling Hub, we have three different priorities, namely life cycle refrigerant management, LRM, environmental dumping of cooling appliances, and complementing Kigali implementation with cooling efficiencies. So some of them are highlighted in today's discussion. In 2023, countries gathered at COP28 in Dubai, United Arab Emirates, and created the momentum to raise our ambition towards the net zero emission goal by agreeing on the first global stocktake. As part of the decision, the Conference of Parties, serving as a meeting of the parties to the Paris Agreement, CMA recognized the needs for deep, rapid, and sustained reduction in greenhouse gas emissions in line with 1.5 degrees Celsius pathways, calling for efforts such as accelerating substantial reduction of non-CO2 emissions globally. The CMA also encouraged parties to come forward in the next nationally determined contribution with ambitious economy-wide emissions reduction targets covering all greenhouse gases, sectors, and categories. Moreover, under the COP28 presidency initiative, Global Cooling Pledge was declared by governments, the private sector, and others to achieve sustainable cooling. The pledge calls on countries to take integrated steps to reduce direct and indirect greenhouse gas emissions from cooling equipment. This has been further reiterated at COP28, COP29 in Baku, Azerbaijan And many countries are now in efforts to integrate short-lived climate pollutants, SLCP, or now we call them super pollutants, including HFCs, in their updated nationally determined contribution, or NDC 3.0. Given the recent discussion in the CCAC board meeting in Brasilia in last March, and currently ongoing one in London, the UK, the CCAC continues to accelerate the work to strengthen action to reduce superpollutants such as HFCs towards COP30 in Belém, Brazil, coming in the forthcoming in November this year. In the space of Montreal Protocol, discussion on life cycle refrigerant management has been in focus as well. The Technology and Economic Assessment Panel, TEEP, delivered assessment report on them last year. Following the report, workshop on lifecycle refrigerant management was held at MOP36 in Bangkok, where governments and experts discussed policy, technical, and financial issues. And I shared experiences from Japan's domestic implementation of legal instruments, international cooperation with our developing partner countries. And by implementing the Kigali Amendment, the Montreal Protocol, international society is going to reduce the amount of HFC production and consumption. However, a large amount of refrigerant contained in cooling appliances, which is called refrigerant bank, remains unaddressed. The TEEP report estimated additional avoided emissions of HEC-FCs and HFCs between 2025 to 2050 is up to 39 gigaton CO2 equivalent. This is approximately 35 times of Japan's annual net emissions, and the potential mitigation impact is huge. So if we look at the rapid growing cooling demand in developing countries, we undoubtedly need the life cycle refrigerant management globally and energy efficiency in the cooling sector. Particularly, many developing countries have not yet introduced actions for life cycle management, or there are huge room for energy efficiency in the cooling sector. So in other words, there are strong needs for legislation technology for life cycle refrigerant management and cooling sector improvement in the context of NDCs and enhanced transparency framework under the Paris Agreement. So today we are discussing how we can scale up our climate action in the cooling sector in development and implementation of your NDC. There are multiple benefits of cooling actions itself, but not only that, we are offering a lot of opportunities for climate finance, innovative technologies, and capacity buildings when you are bringing your NDC, HFC emissions reduction via refrigerant management, as well as CO2 emissions reductions via energy efficiency. So now it's time for your cooling action. Now it's time for our joint cooling action in your NDC. So I hope you will enjoy today's discussion. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much for Makoto-san for your opening speech. It's really very insightful. And today we are indeed very lucky to have a lot of experts that will be speaking with us today. It's going to be kind of a marathon or a sprint while everybody tries to deliver the key messages related to integrating sustainable cooling in NDCs. We will start with Anna Maria Clay-Mayer to talk about the recommendations for enhancement of on sustainable cooling in NDCs. We know Anna Maria as a very highly experienced international lawyer and advisor to governments and organizations on law and policy with over 2 decades of practice. And she is the CCAC senior consultant supporting the work on this non-CO2 pollutants in NDCs. Anna Maria, you have the floor.
Thank you, Denise. Thanks very much. And greetings to everybody. It's wonderful to see you all here. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy Friday schedule to be with us for this important webinar. Thanks also, Makoto. He's done a great job at lining up the short presentation that I will give you with the context of where we are coming from and why we're talking about the cooling sector in the context of the nationally determined contributions. He also gave us a little bit of a preview on how the United Nations Framework Convention connects with the Montreal Protocol, a separate treaty that addresses the hydrofluorocarbons, and the cooling sector. So let's take a look. Just first, to give us a refresher, many of you may know this, but others, this may be new. What are we talking about when we talk about the nationally determined contributions? What must they contain? Makoto also touched upon this. The nationally determined contributions, they come from the Paris Agreement, signed in 2015. That's part of the United Nations Framework Convention. And then the Paris Agreement every year has new decisions that elaborate on exactly what countries mean specifically when they said we will all, every signatory of the Paris Agreement, we will all produce pledges or nationally determined contributions that say how much they will mitigate, where they will mitigate, what they will mitigate, and also including issues relating to adaptation and financial contributions, everything that has to do with implementing climate change under the convention. So the Paris Rulebook, which were these decisions that Makoto referred to, gave a little bit more specificity than just we will do pledges. And the Paris Rulebook said, okay, all countries have to include all greenhouse gases, all economic sectors, and all categories. The global stocktake, which is the way that the Paris Agreement is evaluated and strengthened every 5 years, which is another part of the Paris Agreement, its ability to evolve and become stronger with every cycle. The GST, as it is referred to, also has given instruction on what exactly do these NDCs contain. Both the Paris Agreement and the stocktake emphasize to parties that what each country includes in their nationally determined contribution must be aligned with the 1.5 degree temperature target. And that means that the mitigation pledges should be sufficiently ambitious that when all of the countries' pledges are added together, that they keep the world from surpassing this 1.5 C, or in some cases it's perceived as up to 2 degree temperature safety limit. Countries must also include in their NDCs information that supports clarity, transparency, and understanding. What does that mean? That means that that when the NDCs are submitted, that it is clear and transparent exactly what countries will do to achieve the goals and the modalities that they include in their NDC. Every NDC is paired with what's called a biennial transparency report, a BTR, that countries subsequently have to provide to demonstrate that they have implemented, or that they are on the path to implementing what they have pledged in their NDC. So it's a bit of a two-part puzzle that ensures that countries deliver on their commitments or on their pledges. And parties are also required to ensure that their NDC is progressively more ambitious than the previous NDC. In this particular cycle, the UNFCCC is referring to it as the NDC 3.0, because for many countries this is now the third time they prepare an NDC. Once just before Paris was agreed, once in the couple of years after, and then this is the third NDC. And in 2025, countries should submit that NDC before the COP30 in Belém, and then they will have another NDC cycle in 5 years. The pledges contained in this NDC cycle are to cover the time period from 2025 all the way up to 2035. So that implementation period is actually a 10-year implementation period. Okay, so CCAC, on the basis of what's required for countries, under the UNFCCC. CCAC goes sort of one step further and says, for countries to have truly ambitious NDCs and to enhance them in this cycle, to make them stronger as required under the Paris Agreement, that all NDCs should include both the carbon dioxide and all the non-carbon dioxide, or as Makoto explained to us, the super pollutants, right? And in the cooling sector, we're specifically talking about the fluorinated gases, but we're also talking about the greenhouse gases produced by the energy that is used in the cooling sector. And we'll take a look at that in a moment. CCAC also suggests that countries integrate a vision that also looks at air quality planning in their climate strategies, and there's some aspects of that in the cooling sector. That countries harness related global, regional, and national strategies. In the cooling sector, specifically, what we're talking about mostly is the Montreal Protocol and its Kigali Amendment, but also any other regional initiatives that can help countries to implement their NDC. And then back to that reporting requirement that countries ensure there's comprehensive reporting on all those pollutants. Including cooling in NDC 3.0 means ensuring that there are clear sector-specific pledges, and those reduction targets can come directly from the requirements under the Montreal Protocol that all countries, and Montreal Protocol is a universal treaty, so all countries have signed and ratified that treaty. So taking those targets from Montreal and including them, having those reflected in the NDCs. But we can also go beyond that, and we'll see some of our speakers talk about some of the things that are even more ambitious than just what's included in Montreal. We also recommend highlighting the adaptation, health, and environmental co-benefits of the cooling sector in the NDC. So everything that has to do with access to cooling, and we'll hear a little bit more about that, ensuring that the pharmaceuticals have cold chain protection so that we can protect our medicines and our health facilities, as well as protect food security by having strong cold chains in the agricultural sector and also in food sales and food transportation. Engaging all stakeholders, so local governments, private sector, communities, end users, in the planning stages and implementation of the NDCs ensures that we can deliver on these ambitious pledges. And then utilizing the very robust monitoring and reporting mechanisms that are already contained in the Montreal Protocol will help countries make sure that they can deliver on the pledges that they include in their NDC. So all sectors and categories, and I've talked about a few of those, and I won't repeat them, but just to highlight a few more that the industrial sector is where we see the chemical productions, but we also have our building sector. So any new buildings, thinking about how the cooling of those buildings is regulated so that we don't have a huge cooling tax on the economy in terms of large amounts of fluorinated gases going into those buildings and then having to deal with those later on, but also the energy required for the building sector. Aligning the cooling sector with the temperature target is actually one of the strongest ways that countries can ensure that their NDC is 1.5 C aligned, because full implementation of the Montreal Protocol and its Kigali Amendment can prevent up to 0.5 degrees of warming throughout the implementation of those agreements. So that's a huge climate benefit. And so ensuring that we are on track with Montreal Protocol, or maybe even exceeding the commitments of Montreal Protocol, is really important. And then the energy efficiency part of that can save an additional point or prevent an additional 0.5 degrees of warming. So up to 1 degree of warming could be prevented by full or even exceeding the implementation of the Montreal Protocol and the Kigali Amendment. And then Anastasia will tell us more also about how measures in the life cycle refrigerant management can go even further. So just to move through this slide kind of gives us a little bit more in-depth look at that, how including the quantitative targets from the protocol that are time constrained, and that are based on very detailed inventories and baselines. This is work that parties are already doing under the Montreal Protocol, so it's a fairly easy move over into the NDCs. And you might be thinking, well, why are all countries not already doing this? And part of the reason is that it was not as specifically required under the previous cycle of NDCs. So we hope that all countries under this new cycle will include very detailed aspects of the cooling sector. But the components relating to adaptation, the components relating to energy efficiency, those are additional to the Montreal Protocol. And so that's where a big part of the opportunity exists. Okay, so just, in sort of summarizing, cooperating across the sectors by having conversations in national governments, local governments, across the climate, energy, health, and agriculture communities is very important to ensuring good development of policies and implementation of the NDCs, accessing financing to implement those NDCs, maximizing emissions from reducing the energy efficiency component. That piece of the puzzle is not fully funded under the Montreal Protocol, but there are some financing opportunities there. And because of the energy savings from optimizing energy efficiency in the cooling sector, there's actually, from many governments' perspectives, there's a huge benefit to investing now in the energy efficiency equipment that will save the load on the grid and that will save customers huge amounts of money down the road when the planet heats and more cooling is necessary, both for human comfort and for food and for the health sector. Ensuring circular economy through that life cycle refrigerant approach is really important. And that's something that is also happening in other sustainable development aspects of our economies. And so folding the cooling sector in is it's beneficial, it's important, but it's not always done. And so we who are interested or working in the sector want to ensure that we're plugging in our information and our tools and technologies and options into the policy development processes. The CCAC has produced 5 guidelines, and one of those is specifically on the cooling sector, and you can deep dive into a lot more detail. I'll just skip over this slide, but briefly, the guidance includes looking at all of the different preparation stages of an NDC and gives detailed information about how to sort of ensure that the NDC is as detailed and as implementable as possible, because we want to make sure that countries are able to deliver on these pledges. And the CCAC guidance on sustainable cooling can be found here. If you take a picture of the QR code, you can go directly there, or you can Google CCAC cooling guidance. I'm sure it will show up. You are also invited to attend any of the other webinars that we have on Black carbon and air quality or agriculture. Share that information with your colleagues. You can find it on the CCAC website as well. And with that, I thank you very much. And Denise, back to you for our next awesome speakers on cooling. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna Maria. And you are very correct that all our speakers are awesome. And I love this next one in particular because she's a woman like you. So our next speaker is going to talk about how life cycle refrigerant management, or LRM, can enhance an NDC and leverage financing for the cooling sector. Anastasia O'Rourke is the Senior Managing Director of the Carbon Containment Lab and also lectures at Yale University on climate innovation, and she also led Yale's procurement of carbon offset. So ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Anastasia.
Well, hello, everyone. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. And as mentioned, my name is Anastasia. I'm here in Connecticut in the US of A, and happy to talk to you about one aspect of cooling, which we've mentioned already, life cycle refrigerant management. And to add to that, how are we going to finance this? Just some ideas and some suggestions, and very briefly about our lab. So we're a nonprofit, we're US based. We bring this really interesting perspective of bringing both science and investment perspectives to thinking about high integrity climate solutions. And we do this in quite an entrepreneurial way. As you can see with these photographs here, we like to get out in the field. We like to go and talk to people, meet and understand how these gases are being handled today. And because of the investment perspective that we bring, we really look for undervalued, high-scaled, possible to scale up solutions, and mitigating hydrofluorocarbons, or HFCs, is one of those. We think it's really underappreciated as a climate solution. And in particular, we're focusing on life cycle refrigerant management, as well as looking at some of these alternative cooling technologies that don't even use gases, the sort of next generation. So we like taking a very holistic and partnership-based approach to identifying what the opportunities are. So let's just define life cycle refrigerant management first of all. So as the word implies, we're taking a full life cycle perspective of these gases. And if you can see in the diagram, we're worried about these fugitive emissions coming at when the gases are produced and moved and installed into equipment, as well as fugitive emissions coming out of equipment during their lifetime. And then finally, oftentimes, unfortunately, at end of life of this equipment, oftentimes the HFC gases are vented. But there are things we can do. There are things of like making sure we understand, first of all, taking an inventory of what gases we have in what equipment. We can detect those leaks and prevent them and fix them. And then ideally, we can service that equipment, make sure it leaks less, and recover gases, recycle it, put it straight back in. Or once we've recovered it, there's a couple of different options. One is to reclaim it. So that means to essentially clean it up and make it as good as new, so it can be used and recharged into equipment. Or in many cases, the best thing to do is just to destroy it. And so, LRM is one system here. It's not the only one that we worry about with cooling, but it's actually a very big one, as Makoto mentioned. And as Anna Maria explained, the Montreal Protocol has been really successful in mitigating and curbing the production of both ozone-depleting substances and now HFCs as well, their replacement. But that's really on the production side. But once it enters into equipment, once it's in use or being circulated around, it's actually not covered by the protocol directly. So this may change over time, but this is this installed bank of gases that we're discussing with life cycle refrigerant management, and it's growing and it's very big. So what is it that we can do here? So there are many potential benefits of addressing life cycle refrigerant management. And some of those include just saving money because you're reducing your operational costs by stopping those leaks and stopping the venting that happens. And in addition, there's actually quite a lot of, if you think about how distributed all of those gases are in lots of small pieces of equipment, it's not an insurmountable challenge to gather it all, reclaim it, recover it, reclaim it, move it to the site, and so on. So this, in addition, does actually have an economic opportunity for countries to create jobs. So we see this as a really, we're excited about LLRM because while it's a little under the radar as a climate solution, it's very concrete, it's very low cost, it's sort of immediately actionable, and it's quite measurable. So that's some of the reasons we're excited about it. However, LRM does require a bit of a boost to realize its potential. Some of this is because it's just not a very visible, obvious opportunity to many people. I don't think people really realize the extent of the problem, how big, how many emissions are associated with the cooling sector. And we really do need better data infrastructure to understand where are these gases, where are they going, how much is being emitted, how much is being stored, how much is being destroyed. So there's a bit of a lack of data. And even including them in people's NDCs will be a huge step forward. Montreal Protocol community is in fact starting to build out better country by country data on what is actually out there and going on. In addition, physical infrastructure is needed, things like recovery machines, refillable cylinders, reclamation facilities and destruction facilities. Capacity development and training is needed for technicians, the people actually handling the gases, but also the sort of management system approach to bring this all together. And finally, financial capital is needed for all of the above. So within national climate action plans, as Anna Maria was explaining, there's various opportunities to bring life cycle refrigerant management here. And within NDCs, what we're talking about today, here are several ideas for when and how they can be brought into the NDC. So first of all, with inventorying more carefully the existing refrigerant stocks and equipment and the gases where they are. They may be surprised at how much is actually out there. And then the bank of emissions can also be included in a couple of the different sectors that the greenhouse gas inventories already have. For governments, there are many actions that can be taken. And it's interesting because there's both policy work that can be done, incentives that can be developed, regulations as well. And many countries already have some of these in place. But one interesting one I'll just point out is governments themselves are big users, end users of refrigerants because they own and operate a lot of buildings. And so there are some simple things that they can do to help this whole system of LRM move, such as buying reclaimed gas or specifying that in their own procurement, for example. And an example here of a policy you may want to look at is California's R4 policy. And then we can also start to destroy ozone depleting substances and these high GWP gases and make sure that that is destroyed in an environmentally sound manner. And sometimes that means moving the gas to a different country. And so we need to enable the safe transport of that gas under the Basel Convention as well. So let's talk about financing options really briefly. I know I don't have much time to go into all of this. So, the question is, how do we pay for setting up some of these systems? And how can we find a way for this to be sustainable in the long term? So this is a circular economy approach, and we really need to think hard about this not being a one-off project. These are banks of emissions who are going to be around for quite a long time. There's some key infrastructure we need to pay for, as I mentioned, but we want to find ways of making this happen without constant influx of governmental money. So here are some key categories, and I'll just talk about the first three of these on the screen today. The Montreal Protocol, some of the regulatory models like extended producer responsibility, and then carbon markets, both the compliance markets and voluntary markets, and Article 6. MLF, the multilateral fund of the Montreal Protocol, does provide some funding here, but actually it has limited resources. It's not going to be able to pay for everything. Anna Maria talked a little bit about this, so I'm going to move on. On the regulatory front, there are some really interesting models out there for extended producer responsibility. I've highlighted just a few on the screen from Australia and Norway and California, but there are others out there. But essentially, fees are applied or a levy on the production or the importation of these HFC gases. And then that money then helps pay for recovery and reclamation or destruction. So for example, they're able to pay the technicians to bring the gases back. The technicians get paid to bring the gases back. And that then encourages them to bring them back and helps to pay for their time to do so and to treat that responsibility. So some of these systems have been quite effective in collecting and treating these end-of-life emissions. But what they don't do is cover leak detection and reduction. But still, some good opportunities there. Now, super fast on carbon markets. There are several opportunities here, both in the voluntary compliance market, so for corporate buyers of carbon credits, as well as governmental buyers under Article 6 of the Paris Agreement and the Japan Joint Crediting Mechanism. There are already methodologies that touch on life cycle refrigerant management. Our lab wrote one of them, so very proud about that. There are some credits already being delivered here. So you can see for this ozone depleting substances destruction, over 40 million metric tons of CO2 equivalent has already been delivered. And in fact, it's probably even higher than that because this is from a couple of years ago. Article 6 is a very interesting option, and there are emerging projects, in particular with Article 6.2, which is the country-to-country mechanism. And there are indeed, going back here to these different methodologies, utilizing some of that existing knowledge base for how to actually deliver these projects. So to wrap up, the bottom line here for us is that life cycle refrigerant management is a really high impact climate solution. We think it's relatively low cost and within reach. This is doable. Countries can embed projects into NDCs as sort of finance-ready mitigation actions. And measurement, reporting, verification is kind of critical here across all aspects of meeting our NDCs, but in particular in this area. So that's something to think about. So there's many activities that countries can do. And we really encourage everyone to take a look at this, to take a look at the reports that CCAC and the guidance has put out, and to share your experiences with us. So with that, here's some information on me, some contact information. I'll just say on the left, us and CCAC, delivering a survey right now to countries if you'd like to participate, talking a bit about your inventories, where you're at, what destruction facilities, how you're dealing with transboundary movement of gases. If you're interested, it's a bit more detailed, but we'd love to get your input to that survey. So thank you very much. Denise.
Thank you, Anastasia, for that very, very rich presentation. And just for everyone's information, we will be sharing the slides afterwards, so don't worry about that. And if you have any questions, again, reminding that you can put them on the chat, either in the chat or in the Q&A function of Teams. Our next presenter will talk about the role of cooling in energy transition, resilience, and investment planning. Alvin Jose is an experienced professional in energy transition planning and energy efficiency and serves as the head of energy transition planning and energy efficiency at the Sustainable Energy for All. My friend Alvin, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Denise, and really a pleasure to be here. Just for those who do not know about SE4All, just a quick background. SE4All is a UN agency that is mandated with ensuring that we achieve SDG 7 by 2030, and of course in line with the Paris goal of 2050 as well. And then we have multiple programs that get us spread from policy to technical assistance. I particularly I'm involved with leading our advice to developing countries on how to develop their national energy transition and investment plans. Essentially, this is the backbone document that basically features in ultimately your NDCs as very specific targets and the kind of investment that is needed for this to come in. Just a quick capture. I think the main point that I wanted to make is that cooling sometimes is thought of it in a bad binary way, but I think the way we kind of look at it is it's an energy service, and ultimately it spans across the economy. And it has various facets of it. And a lot of the countries that we are engaging with, and in fact, almost all the countries, are currently thinking about, or at least developing their national energy transition plans. How do they mobilize investments, or they have already done that? And I think there's a need to mainstream cooling in that. And cooling has people-centered approach. It has its net zero low carbon development angle as well across the various sectors of the economy. And very specifically, it also features inside how do you really mobilize climate finance and other kind of consensually finance to kind of get these best-in-class technologies deployed. A lot of it was kind of mentioned previously. Next. Very specifically on the cooling sector decarbonization, one of the key things is that there is a need to really understand what is your cooling requirement in a country. And this is very different from cooling demand. Cooling demand, typically, the way we try to look at it is that what is the current stock of equipments, how has the kind of demand grown over the past years, and how do we make sure that, or see this kind of growing in the future. But one of the key things that we kind of miss is a lot of in the emerging markets and developing economies is that cooling requirement, the actual requirement, there's a lot of unmet requirement there. So we have to make sure that while we are kind of forecasting and making planning for our future, we take into account of this blue line that you said, which is the actual space cooling requirement. We plan for that. And then we use solutions such as passive cooling and smart cooling interventions to kind of really bring it down to a level where you see the red line, which is where your active solutions can actually play a role to meet the demand along with efficiency and renewable energy. And renewable energy specifically, I want to mention over here, is something that is quite overlooked during cooling discussions because it has a very big implication, and I'm going to speak about it a bit in the upcoming slides. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, unmet cooling demand needs to be considered during, along with the existing cooling requirements. The existing cooling stock, or at least the space cooling stock, accounts for around 1 gigatons of CO2. And the refrigerant emissions is roughly around 1 to 1.5 gigatons. Few reports say around 4 gigatons of CO2. Essentially, but this is only looking at the current stock and the kind of current demand. We kind of map out of how we call 54 high-risk countries that are at risk to adopting a lot of inefficient appliances. And if they were able to adopt this because they just don't have electricity access, once they get that, we are going to be looking at an additional 125 million tons of CO2 indirect emissions. And of course, energy efficiency and grid decarbonization plays a key role of at least reducing 40% of emissions from this particular segment. Next. In terms of one key element, I think is also kind of really emerging is that the rising cooling demand from ACs in summers, the global warming is becoming more and more prevalent. We are going to see more hot summers as we're going to be going along in the years. And there is, at the same time, there is a big infusion of renewable energy into the electricity grid. So one of the key things that is really happening is that there's large shares of variable renewables really coming in. And at the same time, the peak demand is really going to increase by significant fold. We are looking at almost 850 gigawatts, which is double of today's India's capacity globally. And this is very important to kind of think about because on the right-hand side on the graph you see is that a lot of the countries which are now experiencing the famous California duck curve, where you're seeing the yellow lines, which used to be the demand during the day being met more and more with renewables during the day. So you can see that there's a lot of renewables that is coming during the day now, and it is going to the black line. But the ramp up times are very high from evening 4 p.m. to night 8 p.m. That's where really cooling really kicks in addition to during the day. And the current grid capacity is just not enough to kind of handle that. And this is really putting a lot of stress on economy and also on the energy power sector in general. And a lot of the high risk countries, especially countries that have high warming degrees, are facing this. And they're trying to address how they can at least make sure that renewables is providing a lot of the support for this cooling demand, and how can this be met in a cost-effective manner. Next slide, please. And that is why it is extremely important that while we think about energy planning, cooling is looked into how it interfaces into the various economies on the demand side and also put on the supply side. It is extremely important that our electricity plants in most of the countries that we are looking at is still being built out. So that is an extremely important angle to look into. At the same time, the GDP per capita of all these countries are going to grow. And the way adoption of technologies is we are seeing today that in many of the consumer segments may not remain the same. And in fact, it might drastically change. And so you have to look into what kind of technologies are available at different economy sectors and also at the income strata level. And then look at how ultimately, when you're planning for the complete system, you can reach a least cost approach. And this is a very complex question to answer. And in fact, a lot of the answers nowadays, at least we in SE4All, are trying to solve this through computational modeling approaches. And because it is extremely important that there is a cooling transition that needs to happen while a refrigerant transition is happening, and also while an energy transition is happening. So it needs to be aligning with the overall net zero effort. And this makes NDC reporting extremely complex. And that's why it's important that this is kind of done in a very comprehensive and holistic manner, and it is well infused in institutional structures. Next slide, please. And as I mentioned, a lot of these insights, I'm going to talk about some of these, key aspects of the power system. Just with a bit of an example of a country case study that we did. But just to say that we have developed something called the SE4All Energy Systems Model. It is an open access approach model tuned to EMD contexts. It completely tracks over 250 technologies across the supply to demand side. Cooling is a part of it in buildings, but of course, cooling spans across road transports, industries, amongst others. And really, it's how does this balance happen between the supply, transformation, and demand sector to make sure that countries that are investing in these new technologies, or at least trying to raise money for this transition to happen, are doing it in a very strategic manner and in a more smart manner. Next slide, please. So this is one of the examples that we tried to do it for a country. I'll not name the country just because it's still under works, but just this is for illustration. We are looking at this country to kind of grow its current AC ownership to almost 5 million units in the next 50, 60 years. We have two types of AC in the particular model that we are working. Actually, there are 3 or 4 types of ACs, but essentially for simplicity, I'm putting a inefficient AC, which is in the blue one, and the efficient AC, which is in the green one. The demand will be essentially the same, right, at the end of the day. So the same number of ACs have to come into to supply the demand. But look at the impact that it has on the supply side. You're looking at almost 150 megawatts of additional power plants that needs to come into the country. Now, this becomes a bit complex because it depends completely on what kind of resources does the country have. Right now, the model is picking up geothermal because that's the only resource that was available in the country. And geothermals are pretty expensive to start with. If not, then there's a risk of relying on traditional power plants such as gas or even coal. So you're actually looking at a much bigger net effect from an NDC standpoint, that if you don't actually adopt an efficient AC, it kind of can impact your other power sector targets as well. We are looking at an added, due to additional electricity supply of almost 1 terawatt hour annually in the next 50 years, 1.5 terawatt hour. Next slide, please. So what does that mean in terms of investments? In terms of investments, the capex in the power sector would basically result in around 400 million US dollars to kind of accommodate an inefficient AC adoption. Flip side, this if actually one is able to adopt the efficient ACs, you're looking at around 500 million USD. So actually a bit more, say 100 million more USDs of savings on the consumer bill. And that is actually a net impact or the net effect of the kind of choices that we make. The modeling effort that we work with that actually optimizes for the least cost solution set. So what it tries to do is to pick up the best efficient technologies, but at a certain point, if it is too expensive, it will go for other options as well. So I think it is an important kind of framework to look into to make sure that how your overall system is going to react based on the kind of energy efficiency policy framework that you'll be giving and what kind of resources do you really have to supply that. Next slide, please. So I think I'll just kind of stop here with a few key takeaway points from my side, and I'm happy to go through this in a bit more detail later. Is that I think there's an important need for countries to start thinking of developing their transition and investment plan roadmaps, because it kind of sits back on the national plans which are already built on the power sector roadmaps, etc., that countries actually already report their NDCs on. So you kind of really avoid this redundancy kind of exercises that is a lot, takes a lot of time, first of all, and it actually kind of there's a risk of actually under-reporting a lot of the work that is already being done. There is a need for actually doing an energy cooling modeling with like a least cost approach. I think that this is something that more and more countries need to now start thinking about this as their balance book becomes more and more strained to invest in different kind of development options. One of the key things about this is that the consumers are going to pay for this. So this is also a key part of this transition story. Many of the developing countries that we are right now working with, or in fact, most of the EMDs are still building out their grid networks and strengthening them. And so this needs to be accounted for while deploying, technologies for space cooling and refrigeration services. On this, I would say that in NDCs, don't think of health and food security only as an adaptation. It has a real mitigation challenge as well. So do think about it. There is certainly a human angle to it, but there is a big actual real world costs in terms of investments that you're going to be looking at. In terms of the countries that have a very high ambient temperature, they're going to have a big challenge in the future with more renewables coming in because they are solar friendly, but at the same time they'll have very high peak demand on cooling, and they really need to work on their grid strengthening to go forward, and this would require significant investments. Right now, the global transition, refrigerant transition, is driven by Kigali Amendment, and we heard a lot of it, of course, and there's a lot of syncing that is happening with the NDC process and Paris, which is a good thing to see. But I think there is a need for Kigali Amendment in general to sync with larger energy transition-led policy technology changes that are happening around. I think it's a misstep to think that this is the only thing that one was missing, and we need to quickly close this. There are other bigger areas to fill. The final bit is that please don't only think about energy efficiency. It's an important aspect, but renewables are really coming in. And how does renewable really play into the to the grid, and how does ultimately one kind of satisfy the grid, and how does really strained grid networks account for all of this is to be also looked into. And so greater demand flexibility is also needed from cooling access. I'll stop it over here and hand it over back to you, Dennis.
Thank you, Alvin. That was also a very rich, presentation, and I think really the message that we're getting is, and also this is what we are sending, that integration is key, and the NDC is an opportunity to look at cooling, but not only on the refrigerant side, but really looking at it at a higher level. So thank you for giving that. Now we're going to zoom in after this. After this, we will have a short break by looking at poll, and then we will zoom in a little bit on some of the countries that have done some integration of sustainable cooling into their NDC. At this point, I would like to ask my colleagues to maybe put in the chat the Slido poll or survey. Just to remind, okay, so now I'm seeing it. So there is a survey that we'd like to ask you, or a poll, and if you can just click this blue button in the chat. It asks what is your affiliation and how are you involved in the preparation of your country's NDC. We'll have two other questions, so I don't know if Amina, Marco, we can also include those additional poll questions. We have to close the poll so quickly. Okay, then maybe we pause later for the next poll. So for the next, yes. So please vote in Slido to let us know where you're from and your affiliation and your NDC involvement. And in the meantime, I also remind the speakers and experts that we might have some questions on the chat or in the Q&A function that you may like to respond to. And if any one of our previous speakers would like to come in now and just, if you want to make a point, please let me know before we move on to the next set of presentations. Okay, now for the next poll, Amina, can we add it in the chat? Okay. So there is a question. The poll is like opening and closing. We are doing this for the very first time, so please be forgiving. And I'm also an old dog. It's hard for me to learn new tricks with these digital tools. So the second poll is on the question, by the year 2050, the estimated number of air conditioners in the world will. So it's a quiz, and if you can answer that, that would be amazing. Then we will share the answers later on. Okay, very good. Now, I think we can just move on to the next set of speakers, since we are a little bit behind on time, so that we can finish in just a little bit after 30 minutes. I'd like to invite our colleagues and representatives from Rwanda, Senegal, and Cambodia. So in these three countries, they have successfully integrated cooling into their NDCs at the second NDC round, and are also enhancing it for this third round. We will just hear quickly on how they did it for the first time, and if it was helpful, and did they do well after they did it for the first time, and how it is being enhanced in this round of NDC 3.0. So we will have our representatives and national consultants from Rwanda. His name is Joseph Ndakize, followed by Fatou Ndaye from Senegal, and then Ing Chaipur from Cambodia. They work very closely with the ministries and the agencies responsible for the NDCs of their country. So go ahead, Joseph, for sharing the experience in Rwanda.
Yeah, thank you, Denise. Good everyone. Good evening, everyone. Good morning for those who are still morning. As Denis said, I'm Joseph Ndachizi from Rwanda. Our experience in including cooling into NDC, we started with first putting in place a strategy which allows for the cooling sector or gives the actions to be done to integrate cooling appliances into the NDC. Now, we came up with a national cooling strategy which aims to promote low carbon economy. And this strategy aims to implement or to fulfill the obligations of Kigali Amendment, phase down hydrofluorocarbons. So the strategy was enacted in 2019. Then it sticks mainly on the minimum energy performance standard of the equipment. It also gives much attention to the access of the information to the public who use this cooling system or cooling equipment. It also gives much attention to the awareness, community awareness and campaigns, where we are engaged, the Rwanda is engaged in increasing the awareness of its population in the use of equipment, the proper handling. Also, it puts in place or encourage the public service or private sector to increase their investment in the cooling appliances. Now, in order to be in a good track, we had a ministerial order. The ministerial order now governs the use of this equipment, where it enforces the phase down of ADS and the phase out of the ADS and phase down of hydrofluorocarbons. This order gives power to the agency in charge of the environment to license institution or business people whenever they want to bring in new equipment. So for every quarter, business people need to request the license, how much equipment, how much refrigerant you have to bring to the country. They give you the how much, they give you license. Then at the border, when the equipment they are to enter the country, we have customs. These are the officers who help business people to clear their goods. These customs, they are trained on a regular basis on these ODS and hydrofluorocarbons. These systems, they are being trainings, they are mainly being done under the ozone unit in the environmental agency. They train all customs from all the borders. We normally have almost 6 borders. They held a quarter refresher trainings so that they can understand the requirement, the type of the refrigerant and the equipment, if they allow, if they confirm with the regulations. These help business people to well track the equipment which is being coming to the country. Then during the NDC2, we had the target. How much do we have to reduce? The target was 95 to reduce to be at 95% during 2020-2024. Then at 2028 to be at 65%. Then in 2033 to be at 30%. Now, in order to put this into practice or more actionable, Rwanda supported the establishment of the African Center of Excellence for Sustainable Cooling in the cold chain. This is an institution, an African Excellence Center. It is being run by the different organizations, UK, University of Rwanda, Environmental Agency. Now, they are training farmers in order to protect their crops, their foods. They are training farmers on the use of refrigerants. So they have categories of farmers. They are training farmers. They are training cooperatives. The aim is that we can have other centers in the countryside so that this can help local farmers, because for us farmers, most of them, they are put into cooperatives. So they are training these farmers on the use of this one. Also, they are training rack refrigerant, the technicians on how to service how to maintain these equipment. Now, there are categories of training. Sometimes they train separately, farmers, technician. Again, they put together the two groups so that they can communicate each other, the farmers and the technician. What are the need of farmers? What are the need of technicians? How can we work together so that we can service? Apart from this, Rwanda has obtained the support from the CCSC on increasing the capacity of technicians, but also to enact certification schemes. So we want to upgrade the technicians, either university level or local technicians, and put in place a certification scheme, a document showing if we want to do this, this is the course you have to go, this is the technical trainings you have to go. Then we will have a round of trainings so that we can have technicians who are well knowledgeable in servicing and maintaining these equipment. We also promote the minimum energy performance, labeling, and energy efficiency through outreach. So the outreach is putting together government institutions, private sector, RAC technicians, because all RAC technicians, they are in one umbrella called an association for refrigerants, for RAC technicians. We have an associations where all technicians, they are working under one associations. Then during the outreach, we combine all of them so that we can have an approach, a common understanding on the use or integration. The end of this, we shall have a certification scheme where all the training, because for the technical schools, we have different technical schools, one technical school for each province, so that we are training the teachers so that we can upscale this information to the student who will be now going out, joining the association of the refrigerant. Now we want to have a pool of experts in this domain so that now this will support the country to implement the set target. Now this is being added to the new NDC so that we can have a pool of experts locally over Rwanda who can now undertake these services. In brief, those are things we are doing, then others can discuss. Thank you, Denise, and thank you, the colleague.
Thank you, Joseph. We'll move on to Senegal. We have Fatou to share Senegal's experience, another leader in Africa on sustainable cooling. Fatou?
Yes. Hello, everyone. Very happy to participate and bring Senegal cases. So in Senegal, the cooling system into NDC was starting since before NDC 2. But on NDC 2, they bring all greenhouse gas effect on the NDC project. And now for the next NDC, through policy and regulatory framework, they will include cooling target in update NDC. Through the adaptation of National Action Plan via the Kigali Implementation Plan, and they also have many projects under this Kigali Implementation Plan to integrate mass passive cooling into building code, enforce MEPS and labeling standards. They work through the ozone unit into the Ministry of Environment, Ministry of Environment and Transition Ecology, which they have a Bureau of Ozone. And in this bureau, they work with a lot of stakeholders in transport sector, industrial sector, private sector, CSO, and so on. So they also try to mobilize financing through GFC and the Paris Agreement or climate change UNFCCC in order to foster public-private partnership in cool chain. And also through administration on customs and commercial administration, they have fiscal incentive for efficient technology in order to not only save good appliance into the custom layers, before they enter into Senegal, and also promote cooling as a service model. It is very important to promote that cooling is a service model. We are on the hot country, very hot country. We need to cool, but it also be under certain good practice. We also try to link to the energy transition, scale up high efficiency cooling appliance. So when we try have new appliance in cooling system, we try to get a high efficiency cooling appliance in order to have less emission on greenhouse gas effect, because in the last NDC they take into account the greenhouse gas effects. But in this new NDC, we'll open a windows to specify that this not only is a greenhouse gas effect, but it's also a short life climate pollutant like HSC and so on. So in integrating this kind of phasing out model of short life climate pollutant, we also have tried to deploy solar power decentralization cooling, because as in this country we have much solar appliance, we can also move into other system of cooling and using solar powered cooling system. That's in order to integrate also this kind of energy in the planning, urbanization, and all sort of linkage. We also have to upgrade, we'll try to upgrade to meet this cooling demand, because the cooling demand is higher, mainly in the hot period of the year, during the year. During this year, we also use cooling demand. The cooling demand is very high, so you have to meet our commitment in using less appliance in this context. Under the refrigerant management also and Kigali Amendment, the Kigali Amendment roadmap is set up, and there's a lot of project under Articles 5. And during this Kigali Amendment implementation roadmap, the Bureau Ozone work with, as I said, with private sectors, all stakeholders, a lot of stakeholders. They train them. They also replace some device who deal with HFC or some short life climate pollutant or substance in this device, and replace it with other substance. And also so they train technicians on natural refrigerant, establish recovery destruction system, and enable to cooperate regionally on with waste HFC product. We have some problem with this, because under the Montreal protocol, under the MOP protocol, they are not how can I say that? They don't have an article or some kind of device on how they deal with waste on HFC, all appliance on HFC. We also have to link with Basel Rotterdam Convention. The Basel Rotterdam Convention in Dakar Center have to work with this kind of waste in order to make a good practical under this waste. So also we have to cost-cutting also measure and develop MRV system for cooling emission. In the Ministry of Environment, mainly in the Director of Climate Change, they set up all MRV system on in order to enhance and to be after the NDC setting, and ensure that equitable and also gender sensitive access are allowed, because we also have to deal with gender equity and gender inequality in this process, in order to bring all the stakeholders in together. In the adaptation strategy also, we have to put together in our system to this project under the Kigali Amendment in order to have positive impact on lowering this greenhouse gas effect, so short-life climate pollutant are very important in this process, and ensure that we increase climate resilience and reduce all out kind of outage, and then create green job and boost local industry. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Patu, for that very comprehensive presentation. And I'll move now to Chaipur to talk for 5 minutes about Cambodia. Chaipur, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you, Dennis, and good evening, everyone, and someone maybe good morning or good afternoon. Yes, today is a great honor to present cooling integration in Cambodia and NDC. Since cooling for the first our NDC submitted in 2015 has not mentioned cooling in its our NDC, but we start mentioning since our NDC updated NDC submitted in 2020 in December. So Cambodia identified cooling under the energy efficiency, and on that time the commencement of our national cooling action plan also started, and with the early stage of HFC phase down. For this NDC 3.0, there's several items to be included, as you can see in our slides. And the NDC 3.0 currently under the preparation, and the validation will take place next month, with support by UNDP and other development partners. And it puts Cambodia in a right position in the significant phase to address cooling, whereas it is no longer just a byproduct of industrial or energy policy. It is now integrated explicitly as the priority under the IPPU sector. HFC reduction target has been set precisely from 1,800 to 2,370 gigaton with our NDC. With support from international partner, we will reduce that HFC with our set target. Cambodia also expands the application of MEPS for ACs, chillers, refrigerations, and other cooling equipment, and sets a clear RV system such as custom data and refrigerant tracking. It's more importantly, our NDC 3.0 development also aligned with our crucial policy. For example, National Cooling Action Plan, long-term strategy for carbon neutrality, and National Energy Efficiency Policy. And in our NDC 3.0, what we do not forget is to include women, gender, elderly, and children. That all of them will benefit from our policy. As having mentioned, the development of Cambodia NDC has several policy options to be included. Yes, we have seen the benefit of the development. Yes, you can see our slide, the core benefit of our NDC 3.0. This reflects a growing recognition that cooling intersect with multiple benefits. For instance, industrial emission mitigation, urban resilience, and health adaptation. Also, our NDC is enable a stronger mechanism to lower peak demand and cost, reduce infrastructure needs for energy. And also we create a green job, inclusive access for vulnerable group, gender sensitive impacts, and especially to unlock climate finance as our previous speaker mentioned Cambodia with the support from our partner, especially CCSC, UNEP, Montreal Protocol. We are implementing several activity to reduce HFC. Yeah, I think it can have our further information in next slide, in our slide attached. Back to you, Dennis. Thank you.
Thank you, Chaipor. And indeed, the slides will be presented and there will be additional slides from the countries. The intention is not really to learn about everything that they're doing, but it's so good to hear that many countries are actually doing a lot, and initiatives and partners are working together to actually support countries that are committed and really serious about integrating cooling and really the important emissions reductions from the cooling sector in the context of their bigger Paris Agreement targets. So one of actually the big initiatives that are really focused on cooling and is providing very good support to many developing countries is the Cool Coalition. And so our next speaker will be talking about leveraging action on NDCs through the National Cooling Pledge. So Amir Salim is the Country Engagement and Climate Policy Lead of the UNEP Cool Coalition. He has over 14 years of experience and worked with many organizations, including the UNFCCC, the Regional Collaboration Center for MENA in South Asia, and the UN High-Level Climate Champions Team, IRENA Innovation, among others. So you have a very long CV, Amir, but over to you. Welcome.
Thanks, Denise, and thanks everyone. It has been really a rich discussion. I enjoyed really all of the presentations from colleagues Anna Maria, Alvin, and also the case studies, and also from Anastasia. I'm really inspired by the country's case studies that I have seen, and I'm happy to see how they are really moving ahead with the Cambodia and with Rwanda. Both are signatories of the Global Cooling Pledge, and I will explain later how actually like the support is happening to the our signatures. But I would also like to take this chance to invite Fatou Senegal to really sign the Global Cooling Pledge. I will take this opportunity, and perhaps we can exchange after this meeting. So the next slide, and let me brief you exactly about what the Cool Coalition. Cool Coalition basically started in 2019 as to find the synergies. You remember Anna Maria when she has been speaking about how to have synergies between Kigali and Paris, etc. So Cool Coalition was like trying to find the blind spot, especially to find the synergies and the interlinkage between the Paris Agreement and the Sustainable Development Goals. And it's, as you see, it's a multi-stakeholder platform. It has more than 250 members and 80 plus countries. And mainly it's acting on three main pillars to provide comprehensive action. The first is about advocacy. And within advocacy, I will speak later regarding, or I explain regarding the Global Cooling Pledge, which contains more than 70 signatory countries. And also how all of this has been shaped based on the science that we provide through our Global Cooling Watch Report, which we produce every 2 years. The first version was 2023, and the second version will be end of October this year, 2025. Also, the action that we provide through the knowledge products and also implementation and supporting countries on deployment of sustainable cooling. Next slide, please. Yeah. So after the establishment of the coalition, and as Denise has quickly briefed about the what we support through our platform, we established with the COP28 presidency, the United Arab Emirates, the Global Cooling Pledge. I remember also Makoto has touched base on that. And that was the first kind of having a clear pledge on where countries can commit on sustainable cooling. And they have briefly 14 commitments. Actually, one of them is that signatory countries and the commit to mention and to, of course, include and integrate cooling measures into NDCs by 2026, as you see here, the first commitment. And importantly, also to develop and formulate the NCAPs, National Cooling Action Plans. And I was really happy to see Senegal and Cambodia, how they reflect based on integrating cooling measures regarding the NCAPs. I will explain this later also in our NDC cooling guide later. And then, of course, countries commit to include passive cooling and also cold chains powered by renewables, and importantly, also the MEPS. So all of the 14 commitments, they vary across all of the different kinds of sustainable cooling measures. Next slide, please. Yeah. So at the Global Cooling Pledge, where we support countries to implement their commitments, we work across 5 work streams, and this is as per our 2030 implementation strategy. The first is data, which is quite important, that we need to inform the signatory countries about what's really needed to do, and also meanwhile track the progress, which is quite important and critical here. We cannot really implement without tracking what we are doing and how far we are from the pledge implementation. Second, through the technical assistance, and I will explain here our new mechanism to support signatory countries on their implementation. Third, also about the methodology that we formulate and develop on cooling plans, including the national cooling action plans and investment plans. And that's one of the takeaways, if I remember correctly from Alvin, was the first one, is to have NCAPs and investment plans. And importantly, of course, you, like every country, must must integrate and embed the cooling measures into the NDCs. And also how we can focus very much and support countries on passive cooling. And fifth is about governance and advocacy, and how signatory countries come together in a very governed and structured process. Next slide, please. Yeah, first one, I will touch quickly on the signs that we provide for every year from the establishment of the pledge. We track the progress of signatories through annual survey that we do, and then we provide them with comprehensive progress of their implementation. I will show you quickly the last year, 2024 progress later. And then also, what about the global membership, all of the countries who are not signing? We do also this comprehensive tracker through our Global Cooling Watch report. And this year, it's going to have a little bit of new focus. Our new focus this year, it will be mainly concentrating about extreme heat and its interaction, especially with access to inequities, and also about the passive cooling and cost assessment. This is like the new main dimension that we will feature this year in our second Global Cooling Watch report. And third, which will be launched very soon, the public dashboard. So it's going to be a dynamic digital board to show you how countries actually are implementing their cooling or sustainable cooling measures and projects. Second slide, yes. As I explained, as part of one of the work streams is to develop methodologies. The first one is NCAPs. So a couple of years ago, we established the National Cooling Action Plans methodology, where we provide guidance to countries. I believe this has been the case for Cambodia and also for several countries like Vietnam, in Asia, in Africa for Ghana and Nigeria, and also very soon in collaboration actually with CCSC colleagues, we contextualize this methodology to fit for the MENA context. Like we started to even have regional NCAP methodology to be tailored and customized for MENA countries. And soon we will be also featuring other regional methodologies based on the signatory countries' request. Also, we just last week in subsidiary body sessions in Bonn, we featured together this NDC guide, which I will explain later quickly, how it supports signatory countries. This guide, actually, it's quite important and critical because it's not actually just one guide coming from the sky, but it's based on collaboration among 10 partners, including CCAC, including C4All, UNDP, GIZ, and actually it's building on what Anna Maria and including what Anna Maria already explained at the beginning. So all of us came together to provide complete guidance on how to integrate cooling both equally in adaptation and mitigation. And I have seen really, I was very happy to see how Senegal and Rwanda and also Cambodia are right now moving into this direction to address cooling measures into both adaptation and mitigation. Also, one of the things that we do, and soon also we will feature another cooling investment roadmap to support countries after they develop their NCAPs, and also, excuse me, after they develop their NCAPs and also include their NDCs, the investment roadmap. And this is in partnership with the World Bank, and we will feature it, I think, next September, hopefully. So we can support countries. Yeah. Here on the country engagement, every year right now on an annual basis, we bring together the focal points to exchange and share case studies, while also presenting to them new trainings on their commitments. And also we meet on the ministerial level at the COP. So on the COP28, also we had our first meeting with the signatory country. Last year at the COP29, as Makoto also mentioned, the ministerial also ministers came together to discuss. And the Global Cooling Pledge is chaired or co-chaired by the COP presidency so far, by the United Arab Emirates and also by Brazil, COP30. So on the right now, I will explain also later quickly how our journey is taking place and shaping until COP30. Through also our advocacy, we collaborate with the G70 and G20 presidencies. So last year, also with the Italian government, we contributed to the G7 on communique of cooling. And also we one of the three main collaborators based on the Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, call to action on extreme heat. So this is our advocacy efforts that we are doing at the Core Coalition. Yes. In a nutshell, this is just like when I mentioned that we track the progress of countries. As you see here on the energy efficient cooling, you'll find 44 countries have mentioned that they are taking the efforts on energy efficiency. This is out of course 72. On the HFC phase down, you'll find 14 countries. On the MEPS, 49 countries, and life cycle management, 41. But let me stop here quickly. These numbers also, we need to clarify later about the quality. It doesn't mean that they mentioned, for example, MEPS or something, that they completely have a comprehensive MEPS in place, or maybe it has been drafted but not up to date. So quality also, this is just our numbers, but if you want to look at the quality, I highly advise you that we can share further data on this, but this is just quantitative, not qualitative. Can we move next? Yeah. And as I said here, passive cooling is one of the great areas that we need to support our signatories on. Only 7 out of 72 have already started to include passive cooling as part of their building energy codes. You see here 54 countries have mentioned cooling into the indices. But here it's something that, as you see, on the first NDC, many countries perhaps mentioned HFCs fell down, but not really much on the quality that we express or we aim for. And this is why the guidance on integrating cooling measures, it has to have a certain quality, like you need also every country to address it within the adaptation equally as important as for the mitigation efforts. Here also 6 only on renewables powered cold chains and 19 on public procurement. Next, please. So as one of the outcomes of the last signatory focal point meeting we had earlier this month, it's to launch the EPIC, Enabling Pledge Implementation for Cooling, which is basically to include technical assistance facility. As you see here, we call it EPIC Solutions. And second is EPIC Deploy, which is a fund accelerator. And this is basically to feature local impact on country. The EPIC Deploy is already started with the seed funding from Italy, equivalent to 2 million fund. And this is mostly going to help 2 signatory countries, Djibouti and Brazil. And hopefully soon we will announce more about its mechanism and its operations, etc. Next.
Amir, if just to request if you can wrap up in 1 minute. Sorry.
No, okay. So can you next slides, please? Yeah. Yeah. So I would wrap up with the NDC guide, NDC cooling guide that we already have started together. So I encourage really all of the members here to join and read about it. And as part of our support to signatory countries, especially for like here from the countries who have been participating, I encourage you to look at this as if you are signatory or not. And if you are signatory, you can, of course, reach out to us, reach out to me, so we can discuss further how we can support you in your NDC cycle. And as you know, like if you even submit right now this year and you want to enhance in 1 or 2 years, as Anna Maria explained, it's a 5-year window. You can always submit another enhanced version as per NDC as known as 3.0. You can read the guide for if you are non-signatory, and I encourage for any non-signatory to really join the pledge to access more support, technical and financial, on the pledge implementation. Thanks, Denise, and it has been really insightful with you.
Thank you, Amir. And we will share Amir's full deck of slides later on, and together with his contacts as well, if you are interested to learn more about joining the pledge, and also the different options for engaging, as well as working together and collaborating in the road to Brazil's COP. So maybe before I give my last words, I'd like to invite Ana Maria if you'd like to react. It's been, we are just 4 minutes over time, but perhaps, just to help us digest a little bit and before we close. Go ahead, Ana Maria.
Thanks, Denise. Well, I think that we've seen and heard from a lot of different experts about all of the multiple dimensions and opportunities in the cooling sector when countries decide and actively incorporate those cooling elements into their NDCs. There's clearly a lot of options, but the 3 presentations we heard from our country specialists show us just how possible it is. And I want to highlight there how all 3 of them emphasized the multiple co-benefits of bringing the cooling sector into NDCs, including things like leveraging additional financing, energy security, food security. And I really liked how all 3 of them also included the gender component, incorporating the role of women into the implementation. And I think with Amir's presentation, it also nicely rounded out the just how we get from point A to point Z. First, you start with your nationally determined contribution. You reached out to the different sectors and stakeholders and developed that really useful tool, which is the National Cooling Action Plan. And that is how all of these practices can be brought into like a cohesive architecture and turned into the implementation that then delivers those benefits. So I am excited, and I think we all can feel just how practical it is, and encourage everyone to go out there and do it, and also use the resources that you have met here online. Connect with us so that we can help you do the best that you can do in the work that you do. So thanks, Denise, and thanks everyone again for joining.
Thank you, Ana Maria, and thanks to everyone who have stayed, to all of our speakers. Again, just to quickly remind you that we will have the next webinars upcoming. The next one will be on integrating black carbon and air quality into NDCs on July 11th, and then after that, focusing on agriculture on July 16th. So these webinars are in our website, and for those that are attending the Montreal Protocol meetings, the Climate and Clean Air Coalition, as well as the Cool Coalition, the Carbon Containment Lab, and others will also be at the open-ended working group meeting in Bangkok, Thailand, and we will actually be organizing a life cycle refrigerant management workshop on the Sunday, the 6th of July. So we hope to see many of you there. Thank you very much for your time, and we wish you a very pleasant Friday afternoon, evening, wherever you are, and a very good weekend. Have a nice rest of your day. Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Have a nice weekend.
Bye-bye.
Thank you and bye-bye.
Thank you. Good day.